Hello, my name is Andrew Knutt, and I am Chairman of Somerset Arts Business Cultural Alliance, also known as SABCA. And this is a re-recording of the Future of Arts and Culture in Somerset conference opening talk that I did. And of course we had about 60 people there attending, and of course we had about 25 people online as well. So it was a well-attended event. Anyway, so why did we look at the future of arts and culture as a theme? Well, there's plenty of reasons why. And I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that there's been a lot of changes since then. Things have changed quite a lot over the past decade or so. For example, we know that the European Union, we used to be part of that. And for those in the arts and cultural sector, they'll know that the European Union used to fund quite a lot of arts and culture and creative industries stuff as well. And also about 10, 12 years ago, we used to have what was known as regional development agencies or RDAs, and they were abolished in 2012. But they actually had dedicated officers and offers for the arts and cultural industry, whereas now we have what is known as the LEP, and the LEP don't have anything related to creative industries or arts and culture or have any specified officers. And of course, we've seen an increase in community interest companies, or CICs that they're known. They were introduced in 2005, and now there's over 26,000 CICs. Why is that important? Because in the old days, you'd had to be a charity if you wanted to access funding, but now you can prove that you are a social enterprise by being a community interest company, but you don't have the red tape. So that's sort of had quite a big hit on the industry in the sense of changes. And of course, the internet was young. And as you can see in the picture, there's an old YouTube screenshot from 2005 when it started. And of course, the iPad came out in 2010. So, streaming was all very young as well. And of course, consumption of arts and culture online has had a big difference in how that's changed the arts and culture industry as well. And of course, there's been this sort of, since austerity cuts nearly sort of 10, 12 years ago, the public perception was that the arts was a luxury. And of course, with the austerity cuts reflected this. But of course, things have changed now. But we are still fighting that cause. So back then, the sector looked a little bit like this. First of all, we had performances, festivals, public art and galleries and stuff like that. We had community projects, so they were quite slim on the ground, to be honest with you. And of course, we had creative practice development, which is basically helping artists and cultural providers to develop their own practice. And of course, we also have tourism because we know that's always been there. And of course, we had exports and touring. Now, many of these weren't really measured very effectively, and if they were only measured economically. But now things have come quite a far ways to today. So, for instance, we still have the same sort of format. We have the galleries and the performances, the communities and stuff like that. But now arts and culture is being used for placemaking. So that's about creating places that are nice to live, work and play in. And of course, we know that there is mental and physical health that's related to arts and culture in the sense of helping people to rebuild their lives by partaking in arts and culture activities. And of course, we have skills development and workforce, which again, we've seen a large increase in people taking up skills development and how important that is to the sector. And of course, we have high street regeneration. This is related to the fact that the shopping on the high street has changed. There's a lot of empty properties. And of course, they're now looking at sort of arts and culture as a way of regenerating those high streets. And then, of course, we have economic development. So this is about how the arts and culture actually has a greater impact on the economic development of an area, such as bringing in people to spend their money and obviously having an impact on the local economy. And then, of course, we know that also arts and culture has been helping things like social isolation and loneliness. So it's about using arts and culture to bring people together so they don't feel so lonely. And of course, we've now seen libraries and heritage locations also adopting more arts and culture within their delivery. So now you'll probably see a little concert in a library. You might see heritage sites putting on more theatre productions related to particular subjects. And all of these are having a bigger impact on the arts and cultural industry. We also noticed that there's more business development since 10 or 12 years ago, in the sense that there's more access to be able to find where business can develop. So it's about taking on people, expanding your operations, maybe looking at exporting or touring. And of course, generally savvying up on the digital landscape to allow you to sell your wares. And of course, we also have STEAM and STEM. For those that don't know what STEM is science, technology, engineering, and maths. And there's lots of funding for projects related to that particular theme, but now they're saying that it should be STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. And the reason why they're bringing the arts part into it is because it actually allows people to have more critical thinking, more better problem solving, but also looking at maybe the aesthetics and the delivery of particular science, technology, engineering, and mathematical products and services. And of course, we also have now cultural districts, or what we call creative clusters. And these are, you can especially see them in large cities, but it's basically where a particular area will be classified as a cultural district or creative cluster, which then brings in inward investment and allows that area to grow, and obviously to help build on the arts and cultural industry within those clusters and districts. And then, of course, we also have social prescribing. So those that don't know what social prescribing is, basically, if somebody goes to the doctor and has been taking pills for, say, I don't know, say depression, and the doctor is finding that it's not really helping, he could stop them from taking those pills and subscribe them to a art course, for instance, where they might do a 12-week course on art. And the whole idea is that it does actually have physical and mental benefits for the attendees. And so now the NHSs in the world are now dedicating budgets for social prescribing. And of course, we've seen education, a big change there, especially since COVID with lockdown. I think a lot of people also looked at sort of trying new skills, especially in the adult sector, so sort of more vocational arts and cultural training. But we have seen that. Ironically, we've seen a reduction in education in schools, which we would all try to fight against, because we know that obviously arts and culture is very important to young people. Which we'll show a little bit more about later. And of course, social mobility. So this is about giving people that are not so fortunate as others perhaps the finance or the assistance to help them be more socially mobile by attending events, partaking in arts and cultural activities. And evidence shows that obviously if we do provide social mobility, it tends to increase the health of the individual. And finally, I think it's the final one, is inward investment. So, for instance, this is about using inward investment or funding to attract investment into an area. And arts and culture can do that. For instance, when a large organization wants to relocate a new factory to a particular town, they don't just look at the factory side of it, they look at the quality of life offer for their employees. So arts and culture plays a large role in bringing in that inward investment, and I'll be covering a little bit more about that in a bit. And of course, the environment has been a large role to play. And what we mean by that is that with the sort of crisis that we have regarding the environment, they are looking at arts and culture as a way of educating the public. And quite often now you'll see environmental sessions or things in your high street or in shops or online where they're using arts and culture as a way of educating the public on those environmental issues. So we can see that that's been adding to it. So compared to the last sort of 10 to 12 years, you can see that there's quite a bit of a difference in the sense of how far we've come today. And of course, finally, we have levelling up, which is basically the government's framework for trying to level up the whole of the UK so that all the money isn't kept in, say, big areas like London. But we also have a thing called the Shared Prosperity Fund, which was a fund to replace the EU money that we used to get. And there's been a lot of information about placemaking and using that fund for using arts and culture to develop regeneration of high streets and so forth. So there's an issue there as well. But what a big difference when it comes to arts and culture. Now, as part of the conference, we also launched a new video. I'm hoping that re-recording this in my home office will show you a little bit more. But anyway, it was to show you the impact of the creative industries. So let's see if this works. So there you go. So that's a new video made by Sapker. The whole idea is to educate the public and policymakers and all those people out there to see if they understand the creative industries a little bit more better and its contribution to our economy. There's plenty of economic data out there for arts and culture. So what I thought I'd do as part of the opening of the conference was to look at some of these themes, very similar to the spider diagram that you saw earlier. So let's look at youth and arts and culture. So this is sort of looking at educational and vocational elements for young people. And here's some data. So participation in structured art activities can increase cognitive abilities by 17%. If you look on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, you'll see the case of cultural learning key research findings from the Cultural Learning Alliance in 2017. But also learning through arts and culture can improve attainment in maths and English. And also learning through arts and culture develops skills and behavior that lead children to do better at school. So it is clear, excuse me, it is clear that arts and culture, if you take it out of the education system, you're actually reducing the improvements in maths and English and behavior. That's the general gist of that particular research. So very interesting indeed. So let's look at skills and employment. Students from low-income families who take part in art activities at school are 3 times more likely to get a degree. Employability of students who study art subjects is higher, and they are more likely to stay in employment. So again, we can see that attainment of qualifications is important once they take part in arts and cultural activities. Let's look further at low-income families. Students from low-income families who engage in arts at school are twice as likely to volunteer. Students from low-income families who engage in arts at school are 20% more likely to vote as young adults. And young offenders who take part in arts activities are 18% less likely to re-offend. So that's a really interesting bit about that. And of course, people who take part in arts are 38% more likely to report good health. So again, we can see that that's really important in the sense of when we talk about making healthy areas and building placemaking. Placemaking is also about health. And of course, if they take part in arts, they are more likely to report good health, which obviously means less strain on the NHS, the doctors, and so forth. Now, I love this one. 93%, different piece of research, by the way, in the top right-hand corner. 93% of 16 to 18-year-olds say studying a creative subject impacts positively on their mental health and well-being. So that's really important, isn't it, when we see about that? And we have seen lots of data suggesting that young people's mental health or the negative element of mental health is getting higher. So maybe they should all be looking at creative subjects as a way of improving mental health. So let's look at the social return on investment. So this is looking at maybe effective social prescribing as an example. So let's have a look here. Real social value. Now this study was on behalf of the British Red Cross. It analysed over 10,000 users of a national prescribing programme over a 13-month period. And the study showed that the social return on investment was valued at £3.42 for every pound invested, which was based upon an investment of 4.7 million, leading to outcomes worth 11.5 million. So you can see quite a big difference there, investing in social prescribing. This is another interesting piece of data. 2 analysts of service delivery costs were Ways to Wellness and Elston. The larger of these, Ways to Wellness, is a social prescribing service for adults in Newcastle with specific long-term conditions. And over 6 years, 5.8 thousand patients used the service up to March 21, and these users were matched with a comparative cohort in the city. And their reduced healthcare usage was estimated to have saved £4.6 million over 5 years. And yet the cost of the social prescribing service delivery was estimated at £1 million. So what we're saying with this data is if you invest in social prescribing, and arts and culture are part of that, you you are actually saving money in the long term. And this data kind of proves that point. So next time that you're applying for any particular funding, you might want to look at that as one of your case studies. Let's look at high street regeneration and placemaking. And like I said earlier, it's associated with levelling up and the Shared Prosperity Fund that the national government has documents and frameworks out there to bring Great Britain back to what it was. But let's look at this. This is the high streets. Now, this was actually in a 2013 report by the Mayor of London, but he highlighted a project in Bristol called See No Evil, which turned a derelict thoroughfare into a tourist attraction, and footfall increased by 75%. But the bit I love the most is the fact that inquiries into vacant premises increased by 70%. So when we talk about high street regeneration, if we invest, shall we say, arts and culture into our high streets, more than likely we'll be able to fill more of those empty shops through other means. So that's a really good piece of data there. And let's have a look at this one. This is a survey. Look at the bottom left. It says High Street Renaissance by the Arts Council in 21. 62% of UK adults agree that culture on the high street gives them a sense of pride in their local area. And 50% of adults would like to see more cultural experiences on their high streets. So that again confirms that obviously arts and culture and high street regeneration, and of course high street regeneration also fits into placemaking, is very important. And a good example of that actually is Savka's Gaumont project, which is a really nice Art Deco 1100 to 1300 seater venue, which is only used for bingo at the moment. And but if it was returned back to an entertainment venue, once it's in full swing, it will bring £10 million into the local economy, would create about £5 to £7 million revenue each year for its own organisation, and create about 100 jobs and volunteer opportunities. So that's a classic example of regeneration of particular areas. And you can find out more on the SAVCA website. If you haven't signed the petition, do so, or you can have a look at more information, but you will find the Taunton Gaumont project on the SAVCA website. Okay, so let's move on to inward investment. So this is about creating a strategy to attract funding and investment. So I'll give you an example. In 21, Sedgemoor area received £1.8 million in grant funding, and £10 million was given to Yeovil. And the Southwest is home to 102 national portfolio organisations. These are Arts Council funded organisations for 3 years, and they will receive a combined investment of 109 million. So what we believe at SAVCA is that actually grant funding should be used as a form of inward investment strategy. And we think it's quite imperative to Somerset's future, and of course for the creative industries. So what that means is that we're asking for basically for strategic officers within councils to understand that actually getting your arts and cultural organisations savvied up and ready to apply for funding could bring in a lot of inward investment into the area. And let's have a quick look at business support. Now, for those that don't know, in 2020, SAVCA did put a proposal into the LEP area, which covered Somerset and Devon, to uplift and grow the sector, which was also looked at lessons learned from other funded support programs in the past. And that proposal has gone to the LEP. We do believe that the DCMS were interested in it. However, obviously it was a 3-year program, but maybe it's something that we need to develop further. But that's just showing that we are fighting for arts and cultural organisations so that we can get funding to provide the support that you need to be able to develop your organisations. And that's whether you're a social enterprise, business, practitioner, community organisation, you all contribute to the ecosystem that we have in Somerset. And another example of business support, Museum of the Moon. I'm sure some of you have seen the installation art by Luke Duram. But actually, he was part of a business support program. That one was because called the Create Growth Program, basically where they looked at artists who had big potential, and of course he got funding to help develop his particular project, and now he makes hundreds of thousands of pounds a year touring his moon project. He's got a new one now called Planets, but that's a classic example, and I'm aware of several organizations in Somerset who could fit quite well with sort of like a Create Growth program, and those programs usually run for 2 years, sometimes 3. They can, they come from DCMS, which is a government organisation, and can give money up to £1.75 million for the programme. So that's really interesting. The only problem is here in Somerset is we don't have enough data to prove that we have these growth organisations, and that's why it's important to join organisations like SAPCA, so you can be on the radar, so that we can ask you questions and see if we can help you and support you. So let's look at some economic value. So this is an Arts Council report. So the kind of money that we contribute to. The arts and cultural industry has grown £390 million in a year and now contributes 10.8 billion a year to the UK economy. And as you can see, it provides you information for where that data comes from. And what else we got? The sector contributes 2.8 billion a year to Treasury via taxation and generates a further 23 billion a year, and supports obviously 363,000 jobs or so. So we can see the arts and culture has changed considerably. It contributes to a lot. There's a lot of information and data out there that can prove that it actually does contribute greatly to health and well-being, economy, placemaking, high streets, and all those other things. And the rest of the conference will look at other pieces of information and data that are important for future planning for the arts and cultural sector. Thank you very much. And as I said, my name is Andrew Knutt, Chairman and Director of Somerset Arts Business Cultural Alliance.